In Toki no Tabibito, we have a game that is utterly infamous in Japan, and effectively impenetrable to anyone outside of it. And I'm not just talking about the language barrier. This is a game where there's cultural complaints about it. And those are things that aren't going to travel at all. The game has an official English title of Time Stranger, and I've seen its Japanese name given as Jiku no Tabibito, probably from an alternate reading of the kanji, but the game is explicitly Toki no Tabibito. As for what it's about, well, we have to travel back in time a little bit, and by a little bit I mean 6 days. On December 20th, an adaptation of the novel Time Stranger was released direct to video. It's about a group of high school students whose bus is pulled back in time through Japanese history. The game uses the movie's poster as its cover art. It also has nothing to do with the movie. That girl on the cover doesn't appear in the game. The game is about a completely different adventure of a side character from the movie. In the game, time cop Kudajima Toshito decides to go back in time and prevent nuclear war in his era. To do that, he needs to change the focus of world history. And how do you change world history? Well, by answering yes and no questions from Sengoku-era historical figures. Now, I'm not a professional historian, but I'm pretty confident that world history didn't hinge on whether or not Nobunaga Oda survived 1582, let alone making tweaks to the isolationist shogunate-era Japan. But that's the premise of this game. There are exactly 2 things you do in Time Stranger. First, you answer yes and no questions. And sometimes you just say yes or no in response to things that aren't yes and no questions. That's what these 2 options on the right-hand side are. Just yes and no. Second, when you land in certain areas, you'll have to get into your ship's teleporter beam when it's time to depart, otherwise you're stranded there forever and get a game over. And that's literally everything there is to this game. The conversation trees are not good in here. Okay, some of that's to be expected since everything's a yes and no question. It's worse than you might think, though. Take the first scene. You travel back in time and appear directly in front of Nobunaga in 1582. When you start talking to him, you'll pretty quickly realize that there's 3 paths in this conversation. 1, you get executed. 2, Nobunaga decides to kill himself. 3, somebody tries to kill Nobunaga. Your response to those 2 events determines what path in history you're on. And there's 5 paths in total. You could end up in a history dominated by gold, a history dominated by love, a timeline defined by power, or a world that's obsessed with food. There's 2 more endings as well. One where you fail to change anything and nuclear war still happens, and one where you thread the needle and everybody lives happily ever after. Well, let's get back to Nobunaga, because you're going to be seeing this scene a lot. You follow the correct branches down the tree to get to the end of the scene, and then you go through a red time warp. Red warps always mean that you're progressing the story. That will drop you in 1592 Osaka Castle. And depending on your choices in the previous scene, you're either meeting with Nobunaga or Hideyoshi. Now you answer more yes and no questions. Get the answers that you need, and you'll go through a red warp again. But if you screw up, and it's not always clear how you're screwing up, you go through a blue warp. Blue warps always take you backwards to try to adjust history before you reach that point. So now you're back in 1582, talking to Nobunaga, and having the exact same conversation tree that you had the first time. Starting to see what the problem with this game is? After a couple of times, you'll already have seen it all, so you'll just be pressing the buttons to get through these scenes. You don't always go back 1 step when you go through a blue warp either. You could be 4, 5 layers deep into the timeline, and go all the way back to this Nobunaga scene. That 4-digit number on the right-hand side is how much fuel your time ship has. Theoretically, if you reach 0, then you get a game over. In practice, you're going to stumble across one of the "they just kill you" endings, long before you run into that. There's no saving your progress or continuing in this game, so if you do get a game over, you have to start all over from the beginning. On the other hand, once you know a conversation tree, you can fly through it in about 10 seconds. So completing the game takes less than 10 minutes when you know what you're doing. Keep going and you reach these scenes where it's kind of a side view. You can walk around inside them, but it doesn't do anything. Just hit the A button to start the conversation, answer the yes and no questions, and then once you've navigated it, walk into your time ship's teleporter. The writing in Toki no Tabibito is renowned in Japan for being pretty awful. Since every character has to wind up asking you a question, it makes the conversation pretty awkward. There's a lot of, "I'm going to do this, is that okay?" lines in the game. It's also looked down on for its depictions of historical figures. Nobunaga, for example, offers you his wife in exchange for his life. Everybody has some wacky characterizations, though, to justify the timelines. There's really no reason to ever play Toki no Tabibito. It's ugly to look at, mind-numbing to play, awful to read, and it doesn't even tie into the thing that it was released to tie into. The only thing this game has going for it is its infamy.